Tobacco companies once poured millions into drag racing. Back in the 70s and 80s, when their ads were banned from TV, these companies turned to the racetrack, sponsoring everything from cars to entire championships. This wasn't just about slapping a logo on a car though. Tobacco money transformed the NHRA, fueling rivalries, building legends, and even painting entire tracks in iconic red and white. So let's fire up this time machine and take a wild ride through the smoke-filled history of drag racing. It all started back in 1975 when Winston Cigarettes became the title sponsor of the NHRA's Premier Series, kicking off a 27-year partnership that changed the face of the sport. This was a time when Big Tobacco was feeling the heat, with advertising bans popping up left and right. They saw drag racing as a wide-open road to reach a whole new audience, young, rebellious, and hungry for thrills. Winston in particular invested heavily in the sport, boosting the cash prize from a humble $100,000 in 1975 to a whopping $2.3 million by the time they pulled out in 2001. Tracks got a much-needed facelift thanks to Winston's investment, and suddenly drag racing was on TV, beamed into living rooms across the country. Winston created a whole lifestyle around drag racing, with events like the Winston Invitational and even offering free paint to tracks that adopted the iconic red and white Winston colour scheme. But Winston wasn't the only tobacco company leaving its mark on drag racing. In Australia, Winfield Cigarettes was playing a similar role. They sponsored teams, series, and even created their own signature event, the Winfield Triple Challenge, which brought together drag racing, superbikes, and touring cars for a motorsport extravaganza. Let's talk about the legends forged in this fiery partnership. Winston did more than just sponsor races. They crafted icons, turning talented drivers into household names, and even curating a super team of drag racing champions. This Winston Dream Team consisted of Gary Scelzi, a dominant force in Top Fuel dragster who secured 3 NHRA Top Fuel championships, the charismatic Whit Bazemore in Nitro Funny Car, and the lightning-fast Angel Sempay in Pro Stock Motorcycle. This star-studded lineup, backed by Winston resources and expertise, went on to achieve numerous victories and championships, solidifying their positions as legends in their respective categories. And speaking of talent, we can't forget about Jim Reed, a true pioneer and legend in Australian drag racing. Reed, with Winfield's backing, smashed about every record on offer, becoming the first to break the 7 and 6 second barriers and the first to reach 300 miles an hour over the quarter mile. He was a champion in multiple categories and a true icon made in the fiery world of Winfield-sponsored racing. Both Winston and Winfield made things even more exciting with big money incentives. Winston's No Bull Showdown in 1999 and 2000 was a unique, special event that pitted Top Fuel dragsters against the funny cars with a massive $250,000 payday to the winner. This epic showdown was held at Bristol Dragway in Tennessee, marking NHRA's return to the venue after a 32-year break. The event featured a combined field of 24 cars, 12 from each class, with a handicapped start to account for the performance differences between the two. The event was a testament to the kind of drama and excitement that tobacco money could create, and it remains a memorable chapter in drag racing history. Winston also had the Winston Million over in NASCAR, a high-stakes challenge offering $1 million to any driver who could win 3 out of 4 special races in one season. This era turned into a golden age for drag racing legends. Kenny Bernstein, the first driver to break the 300 mile/hour barrier in Top Fuel, made history under Winston's sponsorship years. Warren Johnson, the 6-time Pro Stock champion, cemented his legacy during this era. And who could forget John Force, who racked up 11 of his championships during the Winston years. The drivers weren't the only ones benefiting from this partnership. Winston was a marketing powerhouse, and they knew how to make drag racing sizzle. It wasn't just about slapping a logo on a car, it was about creating a whole culture around the sport. Winston understood the power of the media, and they weren't afraid to use it. Back in the day when newspapers were king, Winston brought up ad space in major dailies across the country, ensuring that drag racing made headlines wherever the NHRA travelled. Winston also played a crucial role in getting drag racing on TV. With their financial backing, the NHRA launched its own production company, Diamond P Productions, which helped secure broadcast deals with major networks. This meant that drag racing wasn't just a niche sport anymore, it was reaching a nationwide audience thanks in part to Winston's marketing savvy. And as the anti-tobacco movement gained momentum, the industry fought back. They formed the American Coalition for Entertainment and Sports Sponsorship to protect their interests in motorsports. It was a battle for the soul of the sport, with Winston and other tobacco companies determined to hold on to their drag racing empire. But even empires built on smoke eventually crumble. By the late 1990s, the winds of change were blowing, and the tobacco industry found itself under increasing scrutiny. The Master Settlement Agreement of 1998 was a major turning point, forcing tobacco companies to drastically scale back their advertising and promotional activities, including sports sponsorships. This put RJ Reynolds in a bind. They had to choose between their three major sponsorships: NHRA, NASCAR, and the Vantage Championship, which was a golf tournament. They chose to stick with NASCAR, ending their 27-year partnership with the NHRA. Meanwhile, a similar story was unfolding in Australia. The Tobacco Advertising Prohibition Act of 1992 spelled the end of Winfield's reign in motorsports. By December 1995, all tobacco advertising and sponsorship was banned, leaving a void in the sport and impacting teams like Gibson Motorsport in supercars and Jim Reed Racing's Top Fuel team, who had thrived under Winfield's backing. The loss of these major sponsorships was a financial blow to both American and Australian drag racing, but it was also a cultural one. For decades, these brands had been intertwined with the sport's image. Their departure left a void, raising questions about the future of drag racing. Would the sport survive without the tobacco industry's deep pockets and marketing muscle? "We lost that activation," said John Force. "They did such a good job promoting us. Winston was a big machine that promoted us in every town." The impact was undeniable, but it wasn't the end of the road for drag racing. Meanwhile, President Tom Compton went on to express confidence in the NHRA's ability to find a new sponsor, but it was clear that this was a major loss for the sport. In the aftermath of Winston's exit, the NHRA scrambled to find a new sponsor. The search was intense, with many big-name brands vying for the opportunity, and in the end, Coca-Cola emerged as the victor, ushering in a new era for the NHRA. The Coca-Cola deal was a major coup for the NHRA, providing much-needed financial stability and a fresh marketing approach. But it was also a stark reminder of how quickly things could change. The sport that had once been synonymous with Winston cigarettes was now aligned with a family-friendly beverage brand. The transition wasn't easy. Some drivers, like Gary Scelzi, whose career had been intertwined with Winston, felt adrift without the familiar sponsorship. Others saw it as an opportunity for a fresh start, a chance for drag racing to shed its smoky past and embrace a new image. The loss of Winston's sponsorship was undoubtedly a turning point for NHRA drag racing. It marked the end of an era defined by big money, bold marketing, and a certain rebellious spirit. But it also paved the way for a new chapter, one in which drag racing would have to find its footing in a changing landscape. The smoke may have cleared from the drag strip, but the legacy of tobacco sponsorship lingers. It's a complicated story, a tale of two worlds colliding, the adrenaline-fueled world of motorsports and the controversial world of big tobacco. As John Force put it, they opened that door working with NHRA because they had all the connections. On one hand, tobacco money undoubtedly fueled the growth of drag racing. It helped build legends, fund track improvements, and bring the sport to a wider audience. The iconic red and white Winston livery became synonymous with speed and power, forever imprinted on the minds of fans. But the partnership also raised ethical questions. Was it right for a sport to be so closely associated with a product known to cause harm? The juxtaposition of death-defying drivers and a product that contributed to countless deaths was a stark one, a reminder of the complex relationship between sports and sponsorship. But even as tobacco's presence in drag racing dwindled, its influence was felt in other motorsports. Formula One, for example, still grapples with the legacy of tobacco sponsorship, with brands like Philip Morris finding creative ways to maintain their presence in the sport. In recent years, there's been a growing movement to curb tobacco's influence in motorsports. In 2019, Formula One saw $105 million in tobacco sponsorship, but by 2022, that number had dropped to $40 million, the lowest since 1989. The tobacco era in drag racing serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most thrilling sports can be entangled with complex issues. It's a story of ambition, innovation, and controversy, a chapter in motorsports history that will forever be shrouded in smoke. Now, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the tobacco era in drag racing? Was it a necessary evil for the sport's growth, or a partnership that maybe crossed the line? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this smoky trip down memory lane, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Nitromouth for more great motorsport stories.